Tonight, we're going to spend the next few hours living the quiet, ordinary life of someone history rarely remembers. There are no kings, no famous battles, no great discoveries, just another day in the Middle Ages. Tonight, you walk through a quiet day with a medieval monk. Not the illuminated manuscript version, the real one, the cold one, the wool-clad one, the one made of stone floors, dim candles, dry bread, and many small obediences. If quiet nights like this help you rest, you are welcome to stay with the channel. Now, let the room grow a little softer, let your breathing slow, and settle in beside the faint red glow of a rushlight in a monastic dormitory, where the night is not quite finished and the day has not yet begun. You wake in the dark, though wake is not quite the right word. It is more that sleep loosens its grip when the bell sounds through stone. The noise is not violent, it is only steady, a metal note in cold air. It reaches the dormitory, and the room begins to stir with wool, wood, and breath. You are not alone. In many medieval monasteries, especially in the High Middle Ages, monks sleep in a shared dormitory rather than in private rooms. Rows of simple beds or sleeping places sit close enough for coughing, turning, and whispered prayer to carry in the dark. The rule and later custom often keep life communal even here. Rest is shared. So is interruption. The air is cold on your face. The blanket has collected the little warmth your body could make, and leaving it feels like stepping away from the only kindness in the room. You sit up slowly. Your legs are stiff. The floor is colder than the bed. Stone usually is. In winter, it can feel like standing on a cellar wall. You dress simply because simple is the point. A monk's clothing is not meant to flatter him or entertain him. It is wool, useful and plain. In a stricter Cistercian house, plainness is pressed even further, with less decoration and more visual restraint. Not every monastery looks exactly the same, and not every routine is identical, but the general effect is familiar across many houses of this period. Cloth scratches a little. Leather creaks softly. The body wakes because it has to. This is one of the first things the modern imagination often gets wrong. The monk is pictured asleep in perfect peace until sunlight falls through stained glass. In practice, the day is broken apart by prayer. The canonical hours shape time more than comfort does. Night itself has duties in it. You do not rise because you feel rested. You rise because the house rises. Somewhere nearby, a rushlight smokes. Someone clears his throat. A bench gives a soft complaint as weight shifts from it. No one is meant to chatter. Even sound here is managed. In monastic life, silence is not simply the absence of noise. It is a rule, a habit, and at times, a kind of work. Bells speak when mouths should not. The dormitory connects to the rest of the monastery as part of a larger machine for living. Medieval monasteries are not just churches with sleeping space attached. They are full working worlds. Church, cloister, chapter house, refectory, kitchen, garden, storerooms, workshops, perhaps an infirmary, perhaps barns beyond. The buildings guide the body through obedience. You do not decide very much. The walls have already decided many things for you. In some houses, there is a stair leading directly from the dormitory toward the church, because this walk happens so often that the architecture makes room for it. That detail matters. It tells you that getting out of bed before dawn is not an exception. It is part of the design. You gather the last of your warmth inside your habit and move with the others. Sandaled feet or shoes worn thin at the edge make almost no sound at all. The dark corridor smells faintly of damp mortar, old wood, and sleeping bodies left behind. Outside the narrow openings, the sky is still closed. Morning has not offered anything yet, and so your day begins in the hour when most of the village is still deep in bed, walking half awake through stone toward prayer, because in this life, the night office comes before the sunrise does. You pass from the dormitory into colder air. The church takes hold of the sound around you at once. Stone does that. A footstep becomes a small echo. A cough travels farther than it should. Candlelight does not fill the space so much as mark out islands in it. Everything beyond those islands remains patient and grey. This is the night office, often called matins, sometimes joined with Lauds as darkness begins to thin. The exact arrangement can vary by order, season, and local custom, and a monk in one abbey may not keep the hour exactly as a monk in another does. Still, the broad shape is well known. You come here before dawn because monastic time is divided by prayer, not by convenience. The bell has called you, and now chanting psalms and readings occupy the place where uninterrupted sleep might have been. You stand. You sit. You stand again. The body learns this pattern until it no longer feels like a choice. Choir stalls hold you upright when your spine would prefer a wall or a mattress. The wood is worn smooth where hands have rested for years, perhaps for generations. The church itself is one long lesson in repetition. Stone pillar after stone pillar, psalm after psalm, breath after breath. If you imagine endless dramatic chanting, the truth is plainer. Much of the sound is steady, measured, nearly level. Human voices moving together in a way that smooths out the sharp edges of any one man. It is not a performance, it is work offered as prayer, and prayer carried out like work. The rule of Saint Benedict places this communal office at the center of the day, so much so that later readers often summarize monastic life around what Benedict called the work of God. The phrase can sound lofty. The feeling at this hour is more physical. Your feet are cold, your shoulders are tight beneath wool, your eyes want to close during the readings. Wax gives off a faint sweetness. The breath of the man beside you clouds for a moment in the chill. Holiness, if it appears at all, arrives mixed with drowsiness. Outside this church, the monastery's larger life waits in darkness. The kitchen hearth will need tending. Water will be carried. Bread will be cut later in the day. Gardens, if the season allows, will need hands in the soil. On larger estates, barns, granges, rents, and labour far beyond the cloister help make this quiet possible. A choir monk like you may not spend the whole morning handling grain sacks or arguing over dues, but the calm rhythm of prayer rests on a heavy foundation of practical support. Medieval monasteries are spiritual houses. They are also organized households. For now, though, all of that remains at a distance. The office continues. Latin phrases rise and settle. Candles spit softly. Someone shifts his weight and then becomes still again. There is comfort in the order of it, even if comfort is not the same thing as ease. You know what happens next because it happened yesterday, and because it will happen tomorrow, and because the whole building seems to know it with you. When the final notes fade, dawn is not fully there yet, but the dark has loosened. A little pale light begins to gather high at the edges of the church. It does not warm anything. Not yet. It only makes the stone visible. You leave the stall with the same body you brought into it, only slightly more awake, and perhaps slightly more resigned. In a life like this, resignation is not always sadness. Sometimes it is simply rhythm. The bell called. You came. The psalms were said. The world outside is turning slowly toward morning. Soon there will be washing, movement through the cloister, and the first practical shape of the day. But for one more moment, you stand in the cool hush after prayer, while the monastery waits for enough light to begin its ordinary labor. The hush after the office does not last very long. Feet begin to move again across the worn stone. Sleeves brush the walls. A throat is cleared and then quickly quieted, as if even that small sound has remembered where it is. Outside, the air in the cloister is colder than it looked from inside the church. Dawn has arrived only in the technical sense. There is light enough to see the arcade and the pale edge of the garth, but not enough to feel that morning has become friendly. You walk with the others towards the Lavatorium, the washing place near the Refectory. Water runs there when the system is working well, fed through pipes or channels that seem almost luxurious only until you place your hands into it. The cold rises sharply through the fingers and into the wrist. It wakes you better than prayer did. You splash your face. You rub sleep from the corners of your eyes. The towel, if there is one within reach, has already served many hands and feels more damp than dry. Medieval comfort is often simply the absence of fresh discomfort. This small washing is not about leisure. It is part of order. In a monastery, the body is not ignored, it is managed. Hands are washed before meals. Faces are washed when the day begins. Clothing is plain, but it still has to be worn, mended, and kept fit for repeated use. A monk gives up private property, not the fact of having skin, cold fingers, sore feet, or a nose that runs in winter. You draw the cowl a little closer and move on with the line. The cloister arcade holds sound in an odd way. Sandaled steps fade and return. A distant hinge gives a wooden complaint. Somewhere beyond the enclosed walk, someone in the service ranges is already awake over a hearth. The monastery is often imagined as a place of pure silence, but it is really a place of controlled sound. Bells, chant, footsteps, reading, work. Silence lives between them like mortar between stones. Soon you enter the chapter house and the mood changes again. This room is not as lofty as the church, but in daily life, it may matter just as much. Benches run along the walls. Light reaches in slowly. Here, the business of communal obedience is made plain. A passage from the rule may be read. Faults may be confessed. Assignments may be given. If the church orders the soul upward, the chapter house brings it back down to the level of wet sandals, missed duties, and the practical problem of who is expected in which place before noon. For modern people, this can sound severe. Often it was, yet it was also ordinary. Rules feel less dramatic when they arrive every morning. A monk might admit a small failure, speaking out of turn, arriving late, carelessness in some task. The correction might be formal but not theatrical. Medieval discipline had no need to raise its voice each day. Repetition did most of the work. You stand, listen, bow when needed, and take in the day's shape as it is handed to the community. Not every monk will do the same labor. Some are older, some are sick, some hold offices, some read better than others. In one house you may spend more time with books, in another, more time in gardens, workshops, storerooms, or errands tied to the abbey's needs. The famous image of every monk bent over a manuscript is a tidy picture, but most monastic days are less decorative than that. They are divided among prayer, meals, reading, correction, waiting, walking, and whatever useful work has your name on it. By the time the chapter ends, the morning is no longer only an idea. It has become a list of duties inside your body. Your face is still cold from the water. Your stomach has begun to notice the hour. The church has released you, and the chapter house has arranged you. Ahead lies the next plain piece of the day, where obedience becomes movement again, and the monastery begins to smell faintly of bread. After the chapter house, the monastery does not suddenly become lively. It only becomes busier in a muted way. Another office marks the morning. The prayers continue to divide time into manageable pieces, almost as if the day must be cut into careful portions before it can be swallowed. For a monk, this is one of the strange comforts of routine. You are rarely asked to invent the shape of a day. The shape has been waiting for you for generations. When the office is done, the first food may be near at hand, depending on house custom, season, and the exact pattern being followed. A fully precise timetable is hard to recover for every monastery, and this quiet day is a reconstruction made from rules, customaries, and surviving spaces. Still, the general texture is clear enough. You do not begin with abundance, you begin with enough. Bread, perhaps a little drink, something plain, something that asks almost nothing of the imagination. You move toward the refectory or receive this early sustenance in a simpler setting, and the smell reaches you before the meal itself does. Bread has a low, warm smell, heavy and slightly sour. Ale or weak drink has its own dull softness. If pottage appears later, it will carry onion, leek, pea, or barley depending on means and season. Monastic food is often described as austere, which is true as far as it goes. But austere food still has weight. It still lands in the stomach with a kind of mercy. Hand washing matters here too. Order returns in gestures so often that they begin to feel like another language. In many houses, meals are taken in silence while one monk reads aloud. The sound is easy to imagine as peaceful, and sometimes it probably is. At other times, especially when tiredness presses behind the eyes, the voice of the reader may become part of the furniture of the room. Not irritating, not stirring, simply there like the scrape of wood, the setting down of a cup, or the small effort of chewing yesterday's bread into today's patience. The meal is not meant to entertain you. That would be missing the point by several monasteries. It is meant to support the body without inviting it to become too interested in itself. Meat from four-footed animals is often restricted for choir monks, except in sickness or special cases. Fish may appear on permitted days. Legumes, vegetables, bread, and drink do much of the ordinary work. If you are picturing endless fasting and saintly glowing ribs, the more usual reality is less dramatic. It is a community trying to feed many adults regularly, frugally, and without too much complaint. Soon the first practical labor of the day begins. This labor may be reading, it may be memorizing, it may be work in a garden, storeroom, kitchen, workshop, or some supervised task tied to the monastery's needs. In a large house around the 12th or 13th century, much also depends on rank and assignment. Choir monks are not doing exactly what lay brothers are doing. Older ideals of labor remain important, but the actual running of a wealthy abbey can involve officers, servants, estates, and distant granges far beyond the cloister wall. Even your quiet bite of bread rests on fields you may never see this morning. For now, your own task is smaller. That is the comfort of it. The monastery is a large machine of prayer and property, but your hands are only asked to do one thing at a time. Carry this, read that, weed this bed, fetch that vessel, sharpen that quill. Fold into the order already made. It can feel restrictive. It can also feel strangely light. Decision is a burden too, and much of it has been taken from you. You step out again into the growing day. The cloister stones hold a little more colour now. Somewhere nearby, a door to the kitchen opens and closes. A thread of smoke moves into the air. The cold has not gone, but it has become familiar enough to stop arguing with. Morning in the monastery is never only prayer and never only work. It is the steady passing of the body through both, until even hunger, reading, and walking begin to seem like parts of the same long sentence, spoken softly from dawn toward noon. The smell of bread has been following the corridors for some time now, never strongly, only enough to keep the stomach attentive. At last, your steps carry you toward the refectory. You do not arrive alone. The whole house seems to drift there by habit, each man folding himself back into the same order he has known for years. Before the meal, there is washing again. Water runs over your fingers at the lavatorium, cold and thin, making the skin feel clean without ever feeling warm. The stone edge is worn smooth by hands that have done this in every season. You dry your hands as best you can on cloth that is never quite dry itself. Cleanliness here is practical, but it is also ceremonial. Even eating has a shape assigned to it. Inside, the refectory holds a different kind of quiet from the church. In church, silence rises upward. Here it settles low among benches, bowls, sleeves, and wooden trenchers. The room smells of pottage, damp wool, old timber, and smoke that has wandered in from the kitchen hearth. Light comes through narrow windows and falls in pale strips across the tables. Dust turns slowly in it. You take your place where custom has placed you, not because the seat matters very much, but because nearly everything is easier when nobody has to wonder where to go. A monastery removes many small choices from the day. There is a kind of relief in that. The bench is hard, the table is scarred. Someone near you clears his throat and then remembers himself. In many houses, a meal like this is simple, almost to the point of plainness. Bread, pottage made from peas or beans, perhaps a little ale, small and weak by modern standards, safer than doubtful water, and common enough to pass without notice. On permitted days there may be fish. There are vegetables when the garden and season allow them. For choir monks, meat from four-footed animals is often restricted except in sickness or particular circumstances. This is not a feast, and it is not meant to be one. It is fuel arranged under obedience. Then the reading begins. One monk stands or sits at a lectern and reads aloud while the others eat. The voice is steady. Not dramatic, not especially soft either. Just clear enough to cross the room. It may be scripture. It may be a saint's life. It may be a text appointed for correction or instruction. The point is not entertainment. The point is that even the meal is occupied. Your mouth works. Your ears work. Your mind is meant to remain in harness. This is one of the stranger parts of monastic life to a modern imagination. Even hunger is supervised. Even swallowing has a rule nearby. Speech is often limited or forbidden in the refectory, so ordinary requests may be handled by signs learned through repetition. A gesture for bread, a gesture for drink, a small movement of the hand that means enough. Sound itself is disciplined until it becomes another tool, used only where allowed. You lower your spoon into the bowl. The pottage is thick enough to matter, and bland enough not to distract you. It tastes of pulse, onion if you are lucky, and salt if the house can spare it. The bread is coarse. It gives back against the teeth. You chew slowly, because there is no reason to do otherwise. No one is trying to finish first. No one is praising the cook. No one is asking for something sweeter. The meal passes in the company of benches, bowls, and a reader's patient voice. In richer Benedictine houses, the meal might be somewhat more varied than in a stricter Cistercian setting, where ideals of austerity push toward plainer arrangements, simpler spaces, and fewer ornamental comforts. Yet daily reality was never perfectly identical from one abbey to another. The exact fare, the quantity, even the strictness of observance could depend on local custom, wealth, season, health, and office. Still, the broad feeling remains much the same. You eat what is given. You listen. You keep your place. When the meal ends, it does not dissolve into chatter. Benches shift, bowls empty. The reading stops. A prayer may close what hunger opened. Then the room loosens by a very small degree, and the community rises as one body made of many tired, disciplined parts. Your stomach is no longer empty. It is only quiet for a while. The next hour is waiting in the cloister air, where work and reading begin again. Fed, but never heavy, you move back into the day. The cloister receives you again with its patient square of stone and light. Footsteps pass over paving that has learned the shape of sandals. The air carries several small truths at once. Damp mortar, a little smoke, the faint green smell of growing things from the garden. Somewhere beyond the enclosed quiet, there are barns, fields, kitchens, stores, and the labor that keeps all this prayer standing upright. For part of the late morning, your duty may turn toward reading. Not every monk spends each day copying books, despite the modern picture of endless rows of bent scribes. Some do, only sometimes. Much depends on the house, the season, the needs of the community, and your own assignment. What is constant is that reading itself matters. The rule gives real weight to measured reading, especially in ordered hours, and the monastery gives it furniture, light, and silence enough to happen. You stand or sit at a reading desk, worn smooth by many sleeves before yours. The wood has little cuts where quills have been trimmed. There may be dried drops of wax near the edge from a candle used on a darker day. A page rests at a comfortable angle, held in place not for display, but for steady use. If you are reading rather than copying, your hands move less. If you are copying, they move in tiny, careful ways all morning long. A copying task, when it comes, is a slow chain of small bodily acts. A quill must be cut. Its point must be maintained. Ink must be ready. Parchment may need ruling so the lines will hold together and not wander. A knife scrapes mistakes with more hope than elegance. Pumice can smooth a surface. None of it is romantic when you are living inside it. It is close work, eye work, neck work. It asks your back to be still and your fingers to be exact. The room for such labor, if your house has a dedicated one, is not necessarily the glowing fantasy of modern paintings. In some places there are desks set in useful light. In others, reading and writing happen where they can be fitted into the larger arrangement of the cloister and its adjacent rooms. The famous medieval scriptorium exists, certainly, but not every ordinary monk spends every ordinary day in one. The quieter truth is less picturesque. Books are made by patience, assignment, and available light. If your task lies elsewhere, the monastery still offers work small enough to be nearly invisible. You might carry a message from one obedientiary to another. You might sort small items in a storeroom. You might assist in the garden where the earth gives the hands a different grammar from parchment. There are herbs to tend, beds to weed, leaks to inspect, and damp soil to break with simple tools. A monastic garden is food, medicine, and discipline all growing in one enclosure. Outside, the garden is softer than the cloister, but not less ordered. Paths divide the plots. Beds hold sage, rue, fennel, onions, beans, or whatever the house and climate sustain. Water must be carried or directed. Weeds return with a confidence that would almost be admirable if they were not so persistent. You bend, you pull, you shake loose the soil. The smell rises dark and cool. For a little while, prayer is not replaced by labor. It is simply wearing rougher gloves. This is one of the steady truths of a monk's day. The calm is manufactured. It does not appear by itself. Bells must be rung. Meals must be cooked. Books must be read. Gardens must be kept. Accounts somewhere must be managed. In larger houses lay brothers, servants, tenants, and estate workers bear much of the heavy burden beyond the choir monk's own reach. The enclosure feels withdrawn from the world, yet it rests on a broad base of ordinary labour, much of it taking place beyond the walls and out of sight. You do not need to think about all of that every minute. Most likely, you do not. Most likely you think about the line before you, or the ache in your shoulders, or whether the sun has shifted enough to warm one side of the walk. Medieval devotion is often imagined as a constant blaze of feeling. More often it is rhythm, a bell, a bench, a page, a patch of soil. Hunger returning by slow degrees. The body remembers the schedule before the mind comments on it. By late morning, the light has grown surer. Shadows shorten in the court. The first edge of true noon is still ahead, but the day has settled into its middle voice. You have prayed, washed, listened, eaten, read, perhaps copied, perhaps weeded, and all of it has passed without hurry. Soon another office will gather the scattered motions back into chant. Until then, the monastery continues in its plain and practiced way, with sun on stone and work kept modestly in hand. By now the sun stands higher over the cloister roof, and the warmth it gives is modest but real. The stone under your feet has lost a little of its morning chill. The shadows in the court draw in closer to the walls. This is the hour when the day pauses again and turns back toward prayer. You make your way with the others toward the church, for Sext, the midday office. The name itself simply marks the 6th hour by old Roman counting, but what you feel is simpler than that. It is the slight heaviness in your legs from standing, the dryness in your mouth, the small and steady pull of hunger, returning after the earlier meal has worn away. The bell does not sound urgent. It never needs to. It only has to be itself, and your body answers. Inside, the air is cooler than the yard. Candle smoke lingers faintly in the higher dark. The chant at this hour is shorter than the long night offices, but it still gathers the day into order. In a monastery shaped by Benedictine habit, and in many Cistercian houses too, the hours divide labour and reading so that no part of the day fully belongs to you alone. Prayer interrupts work. Work steadies prayer. Even the interruption becomes ordinary after enough seasons. When Sext ends, the community begins to move toward dinner, which for many monks is the main meal of the day. The refectory has already been prepared. Bread is set out. Bowls of pottage wait, thick with legumes or grains, perhaps with onions or leeks, softened down into something plain and filling. On some days there may be fish. On many days there is no meat from 4-footed animals for choir monks, except in illness or special allowance. Monastic food is not designed to excite you. It is meant to sustain you while asking as little from appetite as possible. Before eating, you may wash at the Lavatorium. Water slips over your fingers and disappears into stone channels. The act is practical, but like most things here, it is also disciplined by repetition. You do not rush. You do not linger. The line advances at the speed of habit. Then you enter the refectory again, and the room arranges itself into quiet. Benches scrape once, robes settle, bowls knock lightly against wood. A reader takes his place at the lectern. In many houses, a meal is heard as much as tasted. The voice at the desk continues while spoons rise and fall. It may be scripture, it may be a saint's life, it may be some approved text read in a tone almost as even as the meal itself. The point is not entertainment. No one is there to improve the pacing. You eat what is given. The bread is coarse enough to ask for your teeth. The pottage is warm and soft and a little earthy. If there is ale or a weak drink, it is not a festive cup. Only a safer and more ordinary liquid than plain water could always be. Medieval monasteries were not untouched by sickness, and drink was part of practical life as much as custom. Silence, where required, has its own texture. It is not the silence of emptiness. It is full of swallowing, sleeves brushing boards, a cough hidden badly, the turning of pages at the reader's stand, the distant labour of kitchen vessels being shifted and washed beyond the hall. Even in a strict house, quiet does not mean the world has stopped. It only means your own voice has been set aside for a while. You notice, too, that this meal depends on many places you cannot see from your bench. Gardens, fish ponds in some houses, grain from monastic estates, salt carried from elsewhere. The work of lay brothers, servants, tenants, hired help and kitchen hands. A monk may renounce personal property, but the monastery itself eats through a wide network of fields, rents, stores, and obligations. The spoon in your hand is a very small end of a much larger arrangement. When the meal is done, thanks are given. The community rises by degrees, then all at once. Stomachs are fuller now. Eyes feel a little heavier. The middle of the day has that softened weight it still has in many lives, even if the room and clothing are very different. For a moment, the world narrows to digestion, warm food, and the relief of having been fed enough. Then the bench is empty, the reader closes his text, and the monastery resumes its measured breathing. Somewhere beyond the refectory walls, heat gathers in the herb beds and on the outer paths. Inside you, the meal settles and quiets. The next hour will ask less of hunger and more of wakefulness, which can be its own kind of labour in the calm light after dinner. After dinner, the day does not become dramatic, it becomes slower. This may be one of the most honest parts of the whole monastic routine. You are fed. The air is milder. Light lies across the cloister stones in broad, pale shapes. Your body, which rose in darkness and has already prayed, stood, walked, bent, and listened for many hours, would quite naturally prefer to close its eyes. Sometimes the customs of a house allow a brief rest at certain seasons. Sometimes the day turns instead toward reading, private prayer, or assigned work. Exact practice varies from one monastery to another and from winter to summer. A large and wealthy Benedictine house is not the same as a stricter Cistercian one, and neither is exactly the same from century to century. Still, the general feeling is easy to imagine. This is the soft middle of the day, and staying attentive takes effort. If you are sent to read, you return to a bench, a desk, or a place along the cloister walk where light is good enough to use. The bookrest in front of you may be no grand treasure. It is wood rubbed smooth by sleeves. It is wax spotted. It smells faintly of dust, skin, and old bindings. A page waits. The words are in Latin. If you are a choir monk, this world of texts is familiar even when it is not easy. Reading in a monastery is not always eager study. Very often it is faithful repetition, line after line, with the mind wandering and returning like a tired bird. You move your finger, perhaps not touching the parchment itself, but keeping your place by habit. The letters hold still. Your attention does not. A fly passes near the window slit. Somewhere in the garth a bird makes a quick sound and then thinks better of it. The page remains. This too is work. Not heroic work, not picturesque work. Just the stubborn placing of thought, where the rule and the schedule tell it to go. If your task is practical rather than literary, the afternoon may be spent in the garden, workshop, storehouse, or on some modest duty within the cloister. Medieval monasteries were made of specialized spaces, and an ordinary day carried you through them in sequence. Church, refectory, chapter house, cloister, garden, perhaps infirmary, perhaps kitchen side, perhaps a passage where tools are kept. A monk's life is often imagined as if it happened in one long beam of stained light inside a church. In truth, much of it is walking from one necessary place to another. In the herb garden, the air is different from the church and different again from the refectory. Here the smells are green and sharp. Sage, rue, fennel, leeks, damp soil, crushed stems on the fingers. The beds are enclosed and orderly, though weeds do not respect order nearly as much as monks do. You bend. You pinch away small intruders. You carry water if needed. You loosen earth around useful plants. Monastic gardens supplied kitchens and infirmaries alike, so this quiet labor feeds both hunger and treatment, broth and remedy. The tools are simple: a hoe, a basket, a knife. Your back notices each bend long before your thoughts make language for it. There is a plain mercy in such work. It asks less from the mind than a dense page, while still refusing idleness. In communities formed by the rule of Saint Benedict, manual labor was never just a punishment for having a body. It was part of the shape of obedience and humility, at least in the ideal. In reality, of course, labor was unevenly distributed. Some monks studied more, some administered. Some were old, sick, or occupied by office. And in many Cistercian houses especially, lay brothers carried a great share of agricultural work beyond the choir monks' immediate round. Even so, within the cloister walls, small practical tasks remained part of daily life. The afternoon light changes almost without your noticing. What had seemed broad and golden on the paving now begins to lean. A little breeze slips through the arcade. Cloth shifts against your ankles. The warmth that made you drowsy becomes easier to bear once your hands are moving. This is one of the quiet tricks of the monastic day. It rarely asks you to invent your own purpose. It keeps handing you the next small thing. At times your mind wanders outward past the walls. You may think of the estates that support this place, though you do not see them now. Fields worked by others, barns with stored grain, rents gathered in kind or coin, cartwheels on roads beyond hearing. The calm of the cloister rests on all of that. The herb bed in front of you is near and neat. The economy beneath it is wide and muddy and full of ordinary burdens carried by many people who will never stand in choir. Still, your own world for this hour remains close at hand. A page, a patch of soil, a basket with trimmings, a wooden desk worn by use. The day does not ask for brilliance, it asks for continuance. You give it that. In the warm middle hours, when the stomach is full and the eyelids are heavy, continuance may be the most respectable offering available. By degrees, the monastery grows ready to gather itself again. Sound carries differently as the sun shifts. Feet appear in the walks. Doors open and shut with patient wood-on-wood notes. Nothing rushes. Nothing announces itself grandly. The next office will come and you will rise for it as you have risen for the others, with the same practiced body and the same quiet willingness, while the afternoon slowly loosens its hold. The warmth begins to thin at last. It does not leave all at once. It loosens slowly from the stone, from the grass in the cloister garth, from the sleeves resting against a desk or folded over a lap. The body notices before the mind does. A little less heaviness behind the eyes, a little more edge in the air that moves under the arcade. Somewhere within the monastery, wood meets wood as a door is drawn shut. Sand shifts under a sandal. A cough is smothered into cloth. The afternoon, which seemed settled and endless a short while ago, begins very gently to tilt toward prayer again. You rise when the hour asks it of you. This is not dramatic. It is one more standing up in a day made of many. The office of nun comes in the later afternoon, smaller than the great night offices, shorter than the long labor of morning, but no less regular for being modest. In houses shaped by the Benedictine rule and in stricter Cistercian settings too, the day is divided again and again by these returns to choir. Time is not kept only by sunlight. It is kept by repetition. Your feet learn it as much as your memory does. The church receives you once more with its familiar coolness. By this point in the day, the route there is worn into the body. Cloister walk, threshold, stall, bow. The gestures have been repeated enough times to become almost weightless, yet your knees and back still record each one. Prayer in a monastery is not a matter of floating thought. It is bodily. It requires arriving, standing, turning pages, bending, answering, breathing with other men in a pace no single man controls. Even quiet devotion has joints and muscles in it. The chant at this hour is plain and measured. Nothing in it strains for grandeur. If this is a Cistercian world, the room itself offers little distraction. Pale stone, spare carving, light falling without much colour. If it is a Benedictine house of another kind, there may be more furnishing, more age in the wood, more visible accumulation of generations. Still, the effect is similar now. The voice must do the work. The afternoon has stripped itself down. The mind, a little worn from the long day, does not leap. It follows. By the end of the office, the drowsiness of after-dinner reading has changed its character. It is no longer the thick softness of heat and a full stomach. It is the calmer tiredness of a day, beginning, little by little, to spend itself. You step back into the cloister not refreshed exactly, but steadied. That is often enough. Monastic routine does not promise continual freshness. It offers form. When the body grows slack, the form holds. What comes next depends on the house, the season, and your place in it. No single medieval monk can stand in for all the others. Some afternoons carry more reading. Some ask for supervised labour. Some send a monk toward the garden, the cellar, the infirmary, the sacristy, or a room where accounts and stores must be checked with care, dull enough to make a saint yawn. The popular picture of the monk forever bent over a manuscript misses most of this. Books matter here. So do beans, candles, linen, keys, and whether the ale has soured. So you return, as assigned, to small work. Perhaps it is in the cloister again, where reading can continue in a patch of light that has shifted several feet since noon. Perhaps it is in a workroom where cloth is mended and sleeves brush over rough boards. Perhaps you carry a message within the precinct, not far, only from one obedient corner to another. The task is not heroic. It is exactly the kind of thing that fills most lives in every century. Something must be fetched. Something must be counted. Something must be cleaned before evening gathers and makes every neglected thing feel more obvious. If you pass near the service areas of the monastery, the hidden machinery of calm becomes easier to sense. A monastery looks still from the center. From the edges, it rustles. Water is drawn. A pot is shifted on a hook. Someone in the kitchen judges what can be stretched into supper. Someone checks bread or stores of grain. Larger houses, especially in the high Middle Ages, depend on more than the choir monks visible in church. Lay brothers, servants, hired help, tenants, and estate workers all support this enclosed life in different ways. The quiet of your afternoon is built upon many other hands staying busy somewhere out of sight. You may not think of that every day. Few people dwell constantly on the systems beneath their meal or their roof. Still, the monastery is not sealed away from the world as completely as later imagination sometimes prefers. Beyond the walls are granges, fields, rents, disputes over boundaries, carts in mud, wet wool, broken tools, and peasants whose labour helps keep wax and candles, and grain in bins. Inside the cloister, you meet the result as order. Outside, someone else has met it as work. The distance between the two is real, but it is not absolute. As the sun lowers, the very surfaces of the place begin to change their voice. The cloister stones that glared softly in midday now grow milder. Shadows from columns lengthen into bars across the walk. Dust in a beam of light becomes easier to see. The herb beds, if you pass them, smell different toward evening. Less bright, more damp, mint cools. Crushed sage holds on. The garden never performs for you, but it does keep its own hours. So does the laundry if it hangs in the air, the cloth losing day warmth by degrees. So does your own body, which has now prayed, eaten, read, walked, and bent enough times to feel each of those verbs somewhere in the shoulders. There is comfort in the fact that the monastery does not ask you to invent the late afternoon. It has already been invented. The rule, custom, and habit have done that on your behalf. Your part is narrower. Attend the office. Keep the assignment. Do not speak when silence is appointed. Speak plainly when speech is allowed. Hold the book carefully. Do not waste food. Arrive when the bell requires it. Accept correction. Continue. This can feel confining, and no doubt, sometimes it does. It can also feel merciful. Decision is tiring. A rule can be a burden. It can also spare you from the burden of choosing every hour anew. So the next stretch of work passes in small motions. A page turned, a stitch drawn through cloth, a basket lifted, a note carried, a bench creaking as weight shifts from one knee to the other. Outside, the light moves lower still, and the monastery, without hurry and without pause, begins its slow lean toward evening prayer. So you keep going until the bell gathers you once more. By now, the day has changed its texture. The hard brightness of noon is gone. The air in the cloister feels cooler on your face, and the stone under your sandals has given back some of the heat it held through the afternoon. Shadows of pillars stretch longer across the walk. In the garden beds, if your house keeps them near the inner court, the scent of bruised herbs and damp soil begins to rise again. Sage, fennel, rue, leeks, mint perhaps, depending on the place. Nothing dramatic, just the small evening smell of things that have stood all day in the sun. You move toward church with the others, not quickly and not lazily either. It is one of the gentler facts of monastic life that you do not need to invent the shape of the evening for yourself. The bell has done that already. If the earlier offices can feel stern, Vespers often feels broader and more settled. The work of the day has not vanished, but it has loosened its hold. Bodies are tired in a plain, honest way. Hands that have turned pages or lifted baskets or carried water now hang quietly in the sleeves. This hour matters. In the Benedictine world, the round of prayer is not decoration placed around practical life. It is the frame that tells practical life what time it is. A field may need attention. A garment may still need mending. A storeroom may still need checking. But when the office comes, those things pause. In that sense, the monastery keeps time less by the sun alone than by repeated return. Bell, walk, psalm, bow, response, then back again. The same paths become a kind of worn thread through the whole day. Inside the church, the light is lower now. If this is a plainer Cistercian house, the space may seem spare enough that every sound lingers. If it is a wealthier Benedictine setting, there may be more carved work, more surface to catch the eye, though even there the evening gathers it all into shadow. Either way, the important thing is not grandeur. It is rhythm, standing and sitting, the rise and fall of chant. The way familiar words can feel almost weightless by this hour. as if they know the way better than you do. You are probably not having a grand spiritual revelation. That is worth saying softly, because modern imagination can make monastery life seem like one long ribbon of inner radiance. Often it is more ordinary than that. Your legs may ache, your back may complain. You may be distracted by a loose thread at your cuff, or by the memory of a task left half done. You may feel peaceful, you may feel dull, you may feel only tired. Medieval monastic rules were written for human beings, which means they were written for people who get hungry, sleepy, irritated, absent-minded, devout, and bored, often within the same afternoon. And still, the office works on you. Repetition has its own force. Even when attention wanders, the body knows when to rise. The mouth knows the next turn of the psalm. The ear expects the cadence before it arrives. In some houses, books are shared or memorized usefully enough that less looking is needed than an outsider might expect. In others, the choir books and the training of memory together carry the service onward. The exact custom varies. The sensation is much the same. You are being carried by a pattern larger than your present mood. Outside these walls, the hour is changing for everyone else too. Peasants draw tools in from the field. Fires are built up for supper. Carts creak home. Animals are shut in. The monastery is not outside the world so much as arranged differently inside it. The calm of your evening prayer rests in part on labour far beyond the choir stall. Grain in monastic barns, rents from tenants, produce from gardens, fish from ponds, wool from flocks, work by servants and lay brothers in many houses, all of it helps make this quiet possible. Even here where you stand with empty hands, the evening has been prepared by many hands. That thought does not need to trouble the peace of the hour. It simply belongs to it. Medieval monasteries were communities of prayer, but they were also households, employers, landlords, workshops, kitchens, guest spaces, and storehouses. Their stillness was organized. Their simplicity, where it existed, was maintained. Candles do not appear by prayer alone. Bread does not bake itself. Habits wear thin and must be patched. Roofs leak, gardens bolt in heat. Ink runs low. Someone notices, someone is sent. Someone carries the bucket or checks the tally or shakes the dust from the cloth. By the time Vespers draws toward its close, the edges of the day feel softer. The mind is not asked to leap. It is asked to return. That may be one reason these offices can feel so calming from the outside and so demanding from within. To come back and back again, whether you are inspired or not, is a form of labour too. It is quieter than hauling grain. It leaves fewer marks on the skin. Still, it uses a life steadily. When you step out at last, the evening is waiting in the cloister with its cooler breath and thinning gold light. Supper, if the custom of the house allows it in this season, or some small evening nourishment, may not be far off. If not, then the body will simply move on in its accustomed discipline. The day is not ending all at once. It is narrowing, gently, into fewer sounds and dimmer tasks. The evening has thinned to a gentler shape now. The brighter labour is over. The cloister stones are cooler under your sandals, and the air that moves through the walk carries a little damp from the garden ground and a little smoke from the kitchen fires. You have already given the day many small obediences: standing, bowing, reading, walking where the rule and the bell have told you to walk. By this hour, even your thoughts feel less sharp around the edges. That is not failure. It is simply what a long, ordered day does to a human body. If this house takes some evening nourishment in this season, you move toward it without haste. If it does not, the memory of the midday meal must carry more of the burden. Practices were not perfectly identical from one monastery to another. customs changed by order, season, and local rule. Still, the broad shape is plain enough. Food remains measured. Appetite is not invited to become its own master. In many communities, the meal is simple even when the monastery itself owns broad lands and stores of grain. A monk may live inside walls that hold barns, cellars, fish ponds, workshops, and accounts, and still sit down to something modest in a wooden bowl. So you wash your hands again, perhaps at the Lavatorium in the cloister if that is the arrangement here, water running over chilled fingers into stone or lead-lined basins worn smooth by years of use. Medieval monasteries were full of repeated washings. Not endless baths in the modern sense, of course, but practical rinsing before meals, before certain shared acts, before touching common things. The body is managed the way the day is managed, by rhythm, by repetition, by small corrections made before disorder has much chance to spread. The refectory receives you in the same way it has received generations before you. Long tables, benches polished by wool and habit, the last useful light slipping through narrow windows if the season allows it, or else a softer dependence on lamps and candles. Meals are often kept in silence, or near silence, with one reader speaking from a lectern while the others eat. It is a strange arrangement if you picture supper as chatter and relief. Here, eating is not exactly social in the ordinary village sense. It is communal, yes, but disciplined communal life is not the same thing as relaxed company. You are with others and still largely turned inward. The food itself is plain enough to disappear into the routine. Bread, pottage, legumes, perhaps onions or leeks or cabbage depending on season and store. Fish on permitted days. Ale or another weak drink safer and steadier than doubtful water by itself. Meat from four-footed animals was often restricted for choir monks, except in sickness or special allowance. So the medieval fantasy of feasting monks with grease on their sleeves belongs more to satire, complaint, or exceptional houses than to the ordinary rule-bound evening you are living through here. Most of the time the meal is not memorable. That is part of its purpose. It feeds you, and then it passes. And yet the kitchen behind this modest bowl is not small in its demands. Fires have to be kept. Grain has to be milled. Gardens weeded, fish caught or purchased. Bread baked, vessels scrubbed, stores counted. Many hands, not all of them choir monks, support this quiet bench and bowl. In larger Benedictine and Cistercian worlds, lay brothers, hired servants, tenants, and estate workers often carry much of the heavy economic burden that allows the choir monk to arrive at prayer on time and to eat without bargaining in a market square. The stillness of the meal rests on labor elsewhere. Even now, while you lower your spoon, someone may still be hauling water, banking a fire, or shutting an outer gate. You eat what is given. You stop when the custom tells you to stop. The reader's voice continues steady and a little dry, floating above the scrape of spoon against bowl and the occasional cough politely suppressed in wool. Silence at table is not absolute in every house and every century. No single monastic day can be made to fit all monasteries exactly. But restraint is a common thread. Sound itself is governed. Hunger is governed. Time is governed. By evening, that constant guidance can feel stern. It can also feel merciful. You do not need to decide what comes next. The day has already decided for you. When the meal ends, the room loosens only slightly. Benches shift. Sleeves fall back into place. A few necessary gestures pass where speech does not. Then you rise with the others and leave the refectory in an order so familiar it no longer asks to be noticed. Outside, the light has gone lower again. The last warmth of the kitchen clings to your clothes for a moment, then thins in the open passage. Night is not fully here, but it is close enough now that the monastery has begun to sound different, with fewer tasks knocking from 1 hour into the next, and with the body already leaning, quietly, toward the final office and the dormitory beyond it. From the refectory, your feet carry you back into the cloister with very little thought. The path is known so well that the body hardly needs help from the mind. Stone still holds a little warmth from the day in some places, and none at all in others. Your sleeves brush the air at your wrists. The evening has narrowed into cooler pockets, and the open square of the cloister garden has gone dim enough that leaf and shadow begin to look alike. This is the hour when the monastery grows simpler again. Fewer rooms remain in use. Fewer tasks asked to be finished. Sound itself seems to be folded and put away. A door closes somewhere down a passage. Sandals scrape once on stone. Then even those little noises pass. What remains is the small, shared movement of men going where they have gone every night for years, and the plain knowledge that the last office is near. You enter the church once more. By now your body knows the shape of this return. The church at night is not the church of morning. In the early hours it felt cold and waiting. At this hour it feels worn in, as if the prayers laid into it across the day have made a second kind of furnishing. Candlelight is modest. It does not conquer the dark. It only marks out enough space for faces, hands, stalls, the edge of a pillar, the pale page before the reader. Compline is the last office of the day. In houses shaped by the Benedictine rule and the customs that grew from it, this final service gathers the community before sleep and before the long interruption of night. The exact form could vary from one monastery to another, and a Cistercian house might feel plainer than a wealthier Benedictine one, but the purpose stays steady. The day is being closed. Speech is being narrowed. Mind and body are being led together toward rest. So you stand, bow, listen, answer, and stand again. The motions are small now. The labor is not in lifting or carrying, but in remaining present, while tiredness settles into the back and knees. Chant at this hour often has a different weight. It is less like a call to begin and more like a hand laid gently over the noise of the day. Not silence yet. Something just before silence. Ordered sound thinning towards stillness. If you are very tired, the words can seem to move past you like water over worn stone. You do not lose them entirely. You know them too well for that. But they no longer ask for the sharp effort of midday reading. They ask for endurance. For attention that has become almost bodily. Lips form what memory already carries. The office moves onward, not quickly, but without difficulty. It has walked this path before. By this point in the day, a monk is not choosing whether to feel solemn. The schedule has done most of that work already. Bells, meals, readings, the turning of light, the movement between church and cloister, and workroom and table, all of it has been narrowing the day into this smaller chamber of attention. Monastic calm is often imagined as something naturally floating in the air. More often, it is built hour by repetition, cold floors, ordinary obedience, and the relief of not needing to invent a different life before bed. You notice practical things because practical things are what tired bodies notice. The weight of wool at the shoulders, the slight pull at the back of the calf from standing so many times, the way a cough, held in too long, feels much louder than a cough should, the faint smell of wax, old timber, damp stone, perhaps a trace of smoke still caught in cloth from the kitchen hearth. Sanctity, in many hours of medieval life, smells very much like buildings, fabric, and human nearness kept under rule. At the close of Compline, another kind of discipline begins. The great silence, as later custom often calls the night's hush, is not absolute in every possible circumstance, and practice could differ from house to house. A superior may speak, need may speak, illness may speak, yet the intention is clear enough. After the final office, unnecessary words are set down. The community does not carry conversation back into the dark as though the day were still open for business. Night is protected from chatter. That sounds gentle, and in some ways it is. Silence can be a kindness when no one has energy left for politeness. Silence can also be a rule, and rules change the texture of even the simplest acts. A glance replaces a sentence. A hand gesture does the work of a request. A delay is accepted because explaining it would cost more than waiting. In daylight, this discipline could feel stern. At night, it can feel almost merciful. Nobody needs to perform alertness for long. When the office ends, you leave in the same composed order. No one rushes. There is nowhere worth rushing to. The church exhales its last low sounds behind you. In the cloister, the dark has deepened. The sky above the open center is a cooler grey now, or nearly black in winter. If there is moonlight, it slides thinly along stone edges and leaves the walkways mostly to memory. If there is no moon, then lamplight and habit do what they can. The monastery at this hour is still a working place, but only in the smallest possible way. Somewhere a lamp must be tended. Somewhere a late duty is finished. Infirm monks may need care. A porter may remain alert to the gate. Not everybody in the enclosure is equally at rest. Medieval houses were never as noiseless or as evenly tranquil as later imagination prefers. Even so, for a choir monk moving from Compline toward bed, the public day has ended. What remains belongs to the dormitory, to darkness, and to the few possessions a man is allowed to keep close. You feel the difference at once. During the day, every room had a purpose larger than you. The church gathered all voices into one office. The refectory fed many mouths in one order. The cloister kept many feet moving along shared lines. The dormitory is shared too, of course, but it has another quality. Here the body returns not to privacy because privacy is scarce, but to a narrower claim upon itself. A place to lie down, a blanket, the simple bargain of warmth sought against cold. And so, under the last remains of evening, with the night office still waiting somewhere ahead in the hidden hours, you pass quietly with the others toward the long room where sleep begins in company, and where even rest must fit the rule. The dormitory does not stay fully still for long. Sleep has only just begun to gather itself when the next duty already waits somewhere ahead of it, as regular as cold stone and older than your own tiredness. In many monasteries, especially in the longer dark of winter, the night is not one smooth blanket. It is divided. Rest comes in portions. Prayer does too. At first, the waking is small, a shift of straw. A board creaks under another man turning over. Then the signal comes. Perhaps a bell. Perhaps the hand of the official whose task it is to rouse the house. The sound is not violent. It does not need to be. It belongs to the structure of life here, and your body has learned to answer it before your thoughts are properly arranged. You push yourself up from the bed still warm where your weight had been. The air outside the blanket is cooler at once. Wool scratches softly at your neck and wrists. In many houses, monks sleep clothed or nearly so, partly for discipline and partly because a cold communal room is no place for elaborate comforts. This is not the private undressing and soft mattress of a later world. It is a practical pause between one office and the next. Around you, others are doing the same in the dark or near dark, more heard than seen. A throat clears, cloth rustles. Feet feel for the floor. No one needs to invent a fresh mood for the hour. The hour has its own. It is narrow, obedient, and a little heavy. Even piety at this point must pass through sleepiness first. The dormitory itself holds the remains of the day's warmth badly. Stone keeps its own counsel. Timber gives little more. If there is a lamp or a rushlight, it only reveals how much shadow remains. A row of beds, blankets, habits, and human shapes becomes briefly visible, then half lost again. You are not alone, but neither are you companionable. Shared sleep is one of the plain facts of the life. So is shared interruption. From the dormitory, the way to church is often close by design. In some houses, a night stair links the sleeping room directly to the church transept, a practical kindness in an unkind hour. It shortens the walk, keeps order, and moves many bodies from bed to prayer with the least confusion possible. Medieval monasteries were built for repeated motion like this. The architecture remembers the schedule even when the men are drowsy. So you go down with the others, and the stair feels steeper in the middle of the night than it did by day. Your hand finds worn wood or cold stone. The steps know hundreds of feet before yours and hundreds after. At this hour, the body notices simple things with unusual force. The chill gathered in the wall, the drag in the knees, the dryness in the mouth, the way a sleeve brushes rough masonry. Outside the dormitory proper, the air may feel colder still. The church at night is not the church of afternoon. It is larger in the dark and emptier in a way that makes each small sound travel farther. Sandal or shoe against stone. A cough politely swallowed. The faint stir of cloth as men take their places in choir stalls. If there are candles, their light is local and hard-working. They do not conquer the darkness. They merely occupy a few careful inches of it. This return to prayer in the hidden hours is one of the clearest reminders that monastic time is not the same as ordinary village time outside the walls. Peasants, craftsmen, and servants may sleep through the depth of night when they can. You do not, at least not uninterrupted. The canonical hours break the dark as surely as they break the day. Matins, often joined with lauds in practice depending on custom and season, asks the body to become attentive before it wants to. That effort is part of the offering. The service itself can be long. Exactly how long depends on order, season, feast day, and local custom. A great feast stretches the office further. An ordinary day may be plainer. Benedictine and Cistercian houses do not perform every detail in precisely the same way, and no single monastery stands for all the rest. Still, the broad shape is steady across the world you inhabit. Psalms, readings, responses, familiar words repeated often enough to enter muscle as much as memory. By this point in the day, or rather in the interruption of the night, memory is doing some of the work for you. The text has been heard so often that it can carry a tired mind over its weaker moments. Your mouth forms lines that your waking thoughts would struggle to summon on command. The chant moves not with theatrical beauty, but with use. It is workmanlike holiness. Breath, pitch, posture, standing, sitting, bowing, attending. Quiet labor of another kind. And if you are sleepy, that is not a failure unique to you. Medieval rules and commentaries understand perfectly well that bodies are bodies. They yawn, they sag, they grow stiff. The ideal is vigilance. The reality is a room full of men trying to be vigilant at an hour when flesh would rather not cooperate. There is something almost plain-hearted in that mismatch. Sanctity here does not float above fatigue. It stands inside it. You notice the wood of the choir stall under your hand. You notice how long a psalm can feel when your eyes are grainy and the church is cold. You notice too that the routine leaves little room for private feeling. That can be a hardship. It can also be a relief. No one asks you to be original in the middle of the night. You are only asked to come, to stand in your place, and to continue the office that others began before you were born. The words rise and fall. Readings pass through the dark. A candle gutters and recovers. Somewhere beyond these walls are barns, gardens, roads, sleeping animals. Perhaps a porter listening for a late knock. Perhaps lay brothers or servants in their own quarters. All parts of the larger machine that makes this enclosed life possible. Yet in here, for this hour, the world narrows again to breath. Stone, timber, wax, wool, and the old repeated sentences of prayer. When the office finally eases toward its end, no trumpet sounds for your perseverance. There is only the modest knowledge that one more appointed thing has been done. The body, if anything, feels its weariness more clearly now that it has been asked to stand and answer in the dark. And so, without drama, you prepare to leave the church and feel your way back toward the dormitory, where the remaining portion of the night is waiting as quietly as before. You leave the church without speaking. The cold reaches you again at once. Inside the nave, the candles made a small country of light, and your body could pretend for a little while that night had softened. Out here in the passage, stone gives back no such kindness. The floor is hard under your feet. The air smells faintly of damp mortar, old timber, and the wool of many men who have stood, knelt, and risen in the same darkness. The walk to the dormitory is short. It still feels longer now than it did before the office. You are more awake and more tired at the same time. That is one of the plain tricks of broken sleep. The body has been called up and set to prayer, but it has not been offered daylight in return. So you move in that narrow state between duty and drowsiness, where every small task feels both familiar and mildly unreasonable. In many monastic houses, sleep is not a single deep block through the whole night. It comes in portions. A monk lies down, rises for the night office, and lies down again if the custom of the house allows for the remaining hours before dawn. The arrangement varies by season, by order, and by local practice. Winter darkness stretches longer. Summer compresses things. But the general fact is simple enough. Rest is shared, interrupted, and ruled. You know the route so well that your body almost keeps it for you. The turn by the stair, the timber frame of the doorway, the long, dim line of beds or sleeping places within the common room. Privacy does not greet you there. Familiarity does. That can be nearly as useful at this hour. The dormitory receives you in a hush that is never complete. Someone settles under a blanket. Someone exhales through a blocked nose. Wool brushes wool. A board gives a small complaint under shifting weight. These are not loud sounds. In the middle of the night, they feel large enough. You return to your place. Your blanket is cooler than you want it to be. The straw mattress, if there is one beneath you, is not cruel, but it is not generous either. It has its own lumps and hollows, remembered by the body the way steps are remembered by the foot. You lower yourself carefully because stiffness has moved into your legs while you are standing in choir. Your shoulders notice the descent. Your knees do too. There is no ceremony in lying down again. No speech marks the success of having answered the bell. The reward is only this narrow patch of bedding, this borrowed pocket of warmth that your own body must slowly make for itself. Medieval monastic sleeping arrangements are not the same everywhere, and the details differ from house to house. Some dormitories are larger, some more partitioned, some stricter in what may be worn or removed at night. But communal sleep, practical clothing, and the expectation of readiness belong to the world you are in now. Your hands tuck the blanket closer. The wool smells of lanolin, smoke, and long use. Somewhere nearby, a sleeper has already dropped back into a rough, steady rhythm of breathing. Others are still arriving inside themselves, inch by inch, from wakefulness towards sleep. You join them. This is one of the quieter forms of obedience, not the obedience of dramatic sacrifice, just the repeated acceptance that your own comfort is not the schedule by which the house runs. You sleep when the bell permits sleep. You rise when the bell permits rising. Between those two permissions lies the whole modest geography of the night. Gradually, the church recedes from your hearing. The psalms are no longer in your mouth. The candlelight is gone. The dark becomes simpler. It asks less of you now. The body, having complained in its small, honest ways, begins the old work of surrender. Your breathing lengthens. Your jaw loosens. The cold at the edge of the blanket remains, but the center grows warmer by degrees. For a little while longer, before the next sign of morning, the monastery lets you drift back into the shared sleep from which it borrowed you. For a little while, sleep holds together again, not deeply. Monastic sleep is often more like a truce than a descent. Your body lies on its side under wool and shared darkness, and the cold remains waiting in the boards, in the stone, in the very air above your face. Then, in time, the bell comes once more. It does not feel like an interruption now so much as a summons that has always belonged to the shape of the night. You wake with the others by degrees. A cough, the hush of blanket against blanket. Someone shifts on straw. Someone clears his throat softly into a sleeve. The room is still dim, but no longer at its deepest dark. Morning is not here yet. It is only beginning to think about arriving. You sit up carefully because stiffness has gathered in the knees and lower back while you slept. The body of a monk is not spared by holiness. It complains in the old human language. Tight calves, cold fingers, a neck that does not wish to bow again quite so soon. You stand anyway. That is part of the life. In a Benedictine world, and still more in houses shaped by Cistercian discipline, the day does not begin when you feel restored. It begins when the order of prayer says it begins. So you dress whatever was loosened, settle your cowl, and join the quiet movement toward church. The air in the passage feels sharper than before. A draught works along the stones. Your bare or poorly covered feet know every chill patch by memory. No one needs to explain the route. The monastery teaches the body by repetition. Dormitory to stair, stair to church. Darkness to dim candlelight, sleep to psalm. Lauds belongs to dawn or to the edge of dawn, and its place in the sequence matters. If the night office feels long and inward, this hour opens outward, even when the sun has not yet shown itself. The words turn toward praise as morning approaches. In practice, what you feel first may be less spiritual than physical. The relief of movement, the warmth of other bodies gathered nearby. The way familiar chant carries a tired mind until attention catches up. You take your place in choir and stand when the office requires standing. Sit when it allows sitting. Bow with the others. Turn pages if there is a book before you, or follow what memory has already worn deep into the mind. This is one reason the monastic day can seem severe from the outside. It keeps asking the body to obey before the body has fully awakened. Yet that severity is also a kind of support. At this hour, you are not asked to invent devotion out of nothing. You are carried by the routine, by the voices around you, by words said so many times that they arrive almost before thought does. Little by little, the church changes around you. It may still be mostly shadow, especially in winter, but the shadows thin. High openings begin to hold a paler color. Candle flames no longer rule the room so completely. Stone, which at night swallowed shape, now begins to give it back. The stall beside you has an edge again. The pillar has a face again. Morning enters the monastery not as a burst, but as a patient correction. The service moves on in that plain, steady way medieval observance prefers. No dramatic revelation, no private improvisation, just the work of God, continuing as prescribed, hour after hour, century after century, in one house after another, though never in exactly the same way everywhere. Historians can trace the structure from the rule and from later customaries. The exact sound, the exact pace, the exact weariness in one brother's legs on one cold morning can only be imagined. But the pattern is firm enough. Men rose, men gathered. Men praised God while still half-tired, and that half-tired praise was counted as part of the offering. By the end of Lauds, the day has turned, even if only slightly. Sleep has released its claim. Morning prayer has been given its due. Your mind is clearer than it was an hour ago, though your limbs are not yet grateful. When the office eases and the community begins to move again, the monastery feels as though it has shifted one small step closer to daylight. Soon there will be the next passage, the next duty, the next plain act done in company. For now you leave the choir stall with the first weak light beginning to find the cloister stones. The first weak light that met you in the cloister now grows steady enough to show the joints in the stone and the damp caught in them. Night has not gone far. It has only thinned. The air still carries that early chill which slips under the sleeves and stays there. Your feet know the turns by habit now. Choir, cloister, a doorway. Then another office smaller than the deep night work, but no less appointed. Prime belongs to the beginning of the working day. It is a way of setting the hours in order before hands are fully trusted with them. You stand again with the others, and the body notices that prayer after sleep feels different from prayer after being awake for some time. The voice is easier now. The mind wanders a little less. Even so, this is not the shining piece of paintings. It is a room full of men who are more awake than they were, but not entirely awake yet, saying familiar words in a practiced rhythm. The plainness is part of the point. A day in a monastery is not made holy by novelty. It is made orderly by repetition so complete that even fatigue can find its place inside it. When the office ends, the movement of the morning shifts from church to chapter house. The change is quiet, but it is real. The church gathers prayer. The chapter house gathers conduct. In many Benedictine and Cistercian houses, this room is part of the daily spine of life. Here the rule is read. Here faults may be confessed. Here instructions are given. A monk can spend years learning that the day is not divided only by bells, but also by these small public reckonings, where ordinary behavior is brought into the open and laid flat on the table like a tool needing inspection. You enter with the others and take your place on the hard bench. Light comes in more generously here than it did in the church, though it still feels restrained, as if even the daylight has agreed not to make a display of itself. Stone walls hold the cool. Sleeves brush against sleeves. Someone clears his throat and then thinks better of doing it again. The rule of Saint Benedict, or a customary built upon it, is read aloud in measured phrases. The words are not new. They are almost never new. That is exactly why they can work on a person. Repeated enough, they stop sounding like information and start sounding like weather. The reading is followed by the business of faults and assignments. This part is less famous than singing psalms, and perhaps more useful to understanding how the place actually runs. You live with the same men every day. You pray beside them while tired. You eat beside them in silence. You sleep in the same dormitory, breathe the same cold air, hear the same cough in the dark. Under such conditions, small frictions do not remain small, unless someone tends to them. So a brother may accuse himself of lateness, inattentiveness, speaking out of turn, clumsiness in duty, or some other breach that would look very minor from outside the cloister wall. Inside, it matters, because the whole machine is built from tiny obediences. This does not always mean high drama. Often it means embarrassment in a plain room before men who already know the shape of your weaknesses. The correction may be verbal, the penance may be simple, the memory of it may linger longer than either. There is something almost painfully practical in this. Sanctity, as managed in a monastery, often looks like administration with a conscience attached. The soul is certainly involved. So are lateness, muttering, sleepy inattention, and the failure to keep to a schedule that has been agreed upon long before you were born. You listen, and perhaps once again you are reminded that monastic humility is not a soft cloud of pious feeling. It is a habit trained into the body by regular exposure to inconvenience. You stand when required, you sit when told. You admit small failings aloud. You accept that your private moods are not sovereign here. This can be spiritually serious. It can also be intensely ordinary. A great many holy reputations rest, at least in part, on surviving a long series of mornings in which one has been corrected before breakfast. Then come the assignments for the day. Not every monk goes to the same labor, and not every monastery distributes work in exactly the same way. The neat, modern image of all monks bent over books is too narrow for most houses. Some will read, some will supervise, some will tend to practical tasks. Some will move toward garden, storehouse, sacristy, kitchen, guest area, infirmary, accounts, or errands linked to the abbey's larger life. In Cistercian settings especially, there is a stronger ideal of plain labor and simplicity, though actual practice still varies by wealth, season, office, and the many compromises of real communities. What matters for you this morning is that the chapter house sends men outward into the monastery's separate spaces, each one carrying the same day in a different form. Before that spreading outward fully begins, there may be a brief pause in the cloister walk, the kind of pause medieval routine produces without trying. The stone underfoot has lost a little of the night's severity. The sky over the open garth is no longer colourless. Birds have begun the thin, repetitive business of being birds. Somewhere beyond the enclosed centre of the house, kitchen work is already underway. Water has to be drawn. Fires must be managed. Bread, ale, tools, garments, books, keys, and ordinary memory all need somebody's attention. Even silence depends on preparation. And you, having passed through prayer and correction into assignment, now feel the day become practical at last. Not dramatic, not symbolic, practical. The morning has moved from praise to order, and from order toward work. The monastery, which in darkness seemed almost weightless, begins to reveal the many small systems that hold it up. In another moment, you will go where you have been sent, carrying your half-wakened body into the next necessary task, while the light continues its patient work across the cloister stones. You leave the cloister with the rule still faintly in your ears, and the morning opens into labour. The air outside the church is no warmer than before, though it now carries other smells. Damp stone, ash from the kitchen hearth, a little wet earth from the garden edge. Somewhere nearby, wood is being split with patient, unmusical blows. The monastery has finished telling you what ought to be done. It is now busy doing it. Your assigned work today is indoors, at a reading desk in a room used for study and writing. Not every monk spends every day with books. That quieter picture, the one many people keep in mind, is only one part of monastic life, and sometimes not the largest part at all. Still, books must be read. Accounts must be noted. Letters may need copying. A sermon collection may need mending. A psalter may need checking against another hand. In some houses, there is a formal scriptorium. In others, the labor of reading and writing is spread through rooms that are less grand than the word suggests. A desk, a bench, a board polished by sleeves, and enough light to see by. That can be quite enough. You step into a place of wooden desks and restrained sounds. A cough held back. The dry whisper of a sleeve on rough wool. The tiny tap of a knife against a quill shaft. Light falls in a patient rectangle from a narrow opening, and dust turns in it so slowly that it almost seems to be resting. The room smells faintly of parchment, which has a dry animal note to it, and of ink, which smells a little metallic and a little sour. There is also wax. There is nearly always wax. At your place, the desk is plain. The wood has been darkened by years of hands. Near the lower edge, where a board or lip keeps folios from sliding, the surface is rubbed smooth. Small cuts mark the top. These come from pen trimming and small, careless moments. No one is trying to make an artifact. You are simply trying to make the nib behave. Before any reading or copying begins, there are little preparations. You set down the book or loose sheets you have been given. You check the quill. If the tip has softened, you trim it again with a small knife, shaving away a thread of feather and horn. If the cut is poor, the pen scratches and splays, and then every letter becomes a minor irritation. A little pumice may be used on parchment to take away grease and help the ink sit better. Ink itself is precious enough not to be sloshed about. You mind the horn or pot carefully. Monastic calm often depends on avoiding the kind of foolish accident that stains an entire page before terse. The task is not dazzling. That is part of its comfort. You are not illuminating a king's gospel book in bright lapis and gold. You are more likely checking a text, copying a practical portion, or reading where you have been told to read. The rule of Saint Benedict makes room for sacred reading as part of the day, but the exact amount and form vary from house to house, and by season, and by who you are in the house. A novice is not an abbot. A healthy choir monk is not an infirm brother. A wealthy Benedictine abbey may sound and look different from a stricter Cistercian one. Even so, the desk remains a common sort of truth. Wherever the differences lie, somebody still has to sit still long enough to make sense of words. You begin. The first line is the hardest because the hand is still stiff from cold and from the earlier offices. Your fingers would rather close than stretch. Ink goes down a little too heavy at first. Then the rhythm steadies. Letter after letter. Stroke after stroke. Nothing in the room moves quickly. The labor is in the staying. This is one of the quieter forms of work, but it is not weightless. Your shoulders learn the angle of the bench. Your neck slowly inclines towards the page. Your eyes work against uneven light. If the morning is grey, the letters seem to draw themselves back into the parchment and hide there. If the sun strengthens, the page improves all at once, though it may leave part of the desk in shadow. Reading by medieval light is not a neutral thing. It has moods, obstacles, and favours of its own. Around you, other men are bent to other uses. One may be studying for recitation. One may be correcting a familiar passage by comparing it with another copy. One may be entering figures tied to grain, rents, or stores, because monasteries pray, yes, but they also manage. Bread does not appear because a bell rang. Ale does not fill itself. Candles do not descend from heaven already dipped and dry. The stillness of the cloister rests on stores, gardens, barns, granges, ovens, fish ponds in some places, and many hands that do not spend the day at desks. Even this page before you belongs to sheep, scraping, tanning, cutting, ruling, carrying, and the careful spending of money or produce. If your task is copying, the pace remains deliberate. Medieval writing is not a race, and speed is often the enemy of legibility. A damaged psalm is more trouble than a slow psalm. You pause often, not because the work is grand, but because small corrections matter. A pen is trimmed again. A blot is caught before it spreads. A page is weighted flat by the heel of your hand. Sometimes your lips move just slightly with the words, though no sound should travel far. In a room shaped by obedience, even the mouth can be taught to behave modestly. There is a plain sort of companionship in this shared silence. Not conversation, not ease exactly. More the knowledge that many bodies are submitting to parallel tasks. One man gardens, one stirs a pot, one checks the stores, one works leather, one receives instruction. You sit here with text and ink. The monastery is full of these separate obediences, all happening at once, all made to fit together with as little noise as possible. It is less like a dream than people imagine, more like a system that has learned to breathe. After a while, the room changes almost without warning. The sun reaches a new angle. The chill in your hands eases a little. Someone shifts on a bench. Beyond the wall, a cart or barrow gives a muted creak. The day is not young now. It is properly underway. Your back tells you so before any bell does. And this too is part of being a monk around the year 1200. Not endless ecstasy, not endless copying either. Just a measured patch of the morning given over to careful attention, in a room where wood, wax, wool, and parchment meet. You work until the next office calls, and the page before you, whether fully copied or only partly tamed, waits with the same patience as the stone around it. In a little while you will rise from the desk, blink at the cloister light again, and let the next small duty of the day receive you. At last you rise from the desk because the bell says it is time, and because your body has already been saying so in quieter language. Your shoulders feel packed with straw. Your fingers are darkened with a little ink and dry dust. When you step back into the cloister, the daylight seems broader than it did after prime. It lies across the paving in pale bands, touching the edge of the arcade and the worn middle of the walk where many sandals have passed before yours. You do not hurry. Monastic life contains a great many movements, but very few are meant to look hurried. There is always another office, another bench, another doorway. The monastery teaches the body to move from task to task, without claiming too much importance for any single one. Even the useful work of the morning must eventually be set down. Parchment can wait. Wax can cool. The next necessary thing is the meal, and even the meal is not quite only a meal. Before entering the refectory, you go where the house expects you to go. At the Lavatorium, hands are washed in order. Water runs over stone that has been hollowed smooth by years of use. In some houses there is a carved basin, in others something plainer, but the habit is widespread enough to feel almost universal in the imagination of the place. Dust from desks, garden soil from sandals, ash from the kitchen side of the house, all of it meets the same cold water. The washing is brief. It is not luxury. It is readiness. The refectory itself is one of the great ordinary rooms of monastic life, not grand in the way a noble hall wishes to be grand. Grand in the patient institutional way of stone, timber, benches, and repetition. Long tables or fixed arrangements depending on the house. Bread set out, bowls ready, a reader's place prepared. In many communities, especially those shaped by Benedictine custom, the meal is taken with ordered silence while one monk reads aloud. The stomach is fed. The mind is also kept under rule. You take your place where you are meant to sit, not where appetite would choose. That is a small thing, but monasteries are built out of small things, repeated until they feel larger than choice. The bench is hard enough to keep you awake. The room smells faintly of warm broth, old wood, damp wool, and the little sour edge of ale or weak drink. Somewhere nearby there is the sharper smell of onions or leeks, softened by boiling. If fish has been provided on this day, its scent lingers gently in the steam. If not, then pottage does most of the work. For many monks in the High Middle Ages, this main meal is simple by design. Bread, legumes, vegetables, pottage, sometimes cheese, fish on permitted days. Meat from four-footed animals is commonly restricted for choir monks, except in sickness or special cases. That does not mean every table in every monastery looks the same. Houses vary by wealth, region, order, season, and local custom. But the broad shape is plain enough. You are not here to be delighted. You are here to be sustained. Then the reading begins, or continues if it has already started as the brethren settle. A voice carries over the scrape of bowls and the soft movement of sleeves. Perhaps scripture, perhaps a commentary, perhaps a saint's life, a moral text, or a portion appointed by custom. The voice is not theatrical. It should not be. It must be clear enough to hear and steady enough not to distract. In a curious way, this makes the meal both fuller and quieter. The room is not silent in the modern sense. It is full of managed sound, spoon against bowl, bench against floor, bread broken by hand, a reader continuing, line after line. You eat what is given. There is no menu to inspect and no complaint worth making even if speech were allowed. That sounds stern when set down plainly, but after hours of offices and work, the body receives the food with little argument. The pottage is warm, the bread is dense and useful. The drink is safer than uncertain water in many places, though not always strong. Hunger makes modest meals persuasive. The first few mouthfuls feel almost luxurious simply because they answer a need. And yet, even here, where eating ought to be the whole business, the monastery keeps shaping the mind away from private appetite. The reading reminds you that this bench is not your own little corner of the world. The bowl in your hands rests inside a schedule older than you and likely stronger than your opinions. You lift it, you lower it, you listen when you can. You drift for a moment when your tiredness grows heavy. Then the next sentence from the reader catches your ear again, and you return to the room without anyone needing to call you back. This is one of the quieter truths about a monk's day. Rest is rarely pure rest. Work is rarely only work. Meals are disciplined. Silence is social. Even your hunger is folded into a pattern shared with dozens of other men who are just as hungry, just as stiff, and perhaps just as sleepy in the warmth of the hall. If the modern picture of monastic life sometimes looks perfectly serene, the lived version is gentler and more practical than that. Your knee aches a little. Someone coughs once and stops. The reader turns a page. Steam rises, fades, and is replaced. When the meal begins to draw toward its close, no applause marks the moment. No cheerful talk starts up. The end comes the same way most things come here. By completion, by custom, by a collective sensing that one necessary act has been carried out and that another waits nearby. In a little while you will stand, leave the bench behind, and carry this brief warmth back into the stone passages of the day, where dinner is over almost as soon as it is understood. You stand when the meal is done, not quickly, and not all at once. Benches make a low wooden sound against the floor, sleeves shift, sandals scrape stone. The reader closes his book, and for a moment, the room seems even quieter than before, as if the silence itself has to settle back into place after being used. You file out with the others in the same plain order that brought you in. No one lingers over the table. There is nothing to linger for. Dinner in a medieval monastery is nourishment, not an occasion. Bread has been eaten. Pottage has done its simple work. Perhaps there has been fish if the day and the house allow it. More often, there is only enough warmth in the body to remind you that the morning has passed and the next part of the day is ready to be born. Outside the refectory, the air feels different on your face. It may still be cool in the cloister walk, even if the sun now reaches the open garth. Stone keeps its own memory of the night. Light pools in the square of grass or earth at the centre, and along the covered walk the shade lies in strips between the columns. This is one of the ordinary gifts of the monastery. Not comfort exactly, more a careful arrangement of surfaces so that each hour has its own kind of stillness. Before the next office or assigned labour, there may be a brief interval for washing, for a necessary errand, or for the small acts that keep communal life from fraying. You might pass the Lavatorium again and rinse your hands. You might adjust the fold of your cowl where it has rubbed at the neck all morning. You might carry a vessel, return a tool, or bring a message so short it hardly feels like speech at all. This middle part of the day often escapes the popular picture of monastic life. People remember the church. They remember the choir stalls and the manuscripts. They do not always remember how much of the day is spent simply moving from one proper place to another, making sure bowls are cleared, doors are shut, cloths are folded, and the machinery of order continues without noise. Yet this is part of the vocation too. The rule of Saint Benedict and later customaries are full of these practical edges. Who reads? Who serves? Who cleans? Who keeps silence? Holiness in such a setting is frequently made of management so repetitive that it becomes nearly invisible. You feel that invisibility now. Your body is not heroic. It is simply present. Your stomach is no longer empty, but it is not heavy either. The first sharpness of morning has worn off. In its place comes a flatter kind of tiredness, mild and familiar. If you have worked at a desk, your shoulders hold one kind of ache. If you have carried, washed, or walked, another set of muscles speaks in its own plain language. The monastery does not ask whether you prefer one discomfort to another. It only keeps handing you the next small task. Around you, the house continues in layers. In the kitchen, vessels are being rinsed or scraped. Near the buttery or storage rooms, someone checks what has been issued and what remains. In the church, light moves farther across the paving. In the outer courts, beyond the stricter quiet of the cloister, there may be servants, labourers, guests, or lay brothers occupied with a very different noon. A monastery is often imagined as cut off from the world, and in one sense it is. Yet even here, enclosed routine rests on broad practical support. Grain has to be grown somewhere. Ale has to be brewed. Fish has to be caught or purchased. Candles do not appear by prayer alone. You do not need to think about all of that every hour. Most likely, you do not. Ordinary life rarely pauses to admire its own systems. Still, the signs are everywhere if you move slowly enough. The repaired hem of a garment, the smell of damp wood, a basket set down outside a service door, wax shortened by use, a broom leaning in shadow. These small proofs tell you that the calm of the cloister is worked for, maintained, and paid for in labour repeated so often it begins to look natural. If this is a Benedictine house shaped by older customs, the rhythm may feel slightly fuller, the spaces a little less spare. If it is touched by Cistercian ideals, the plainness may press more firmly on every object and wall. In either case, the broad truth remains the same. The day is divided less by personal desire than by communal need and liturgical time. You are carried in that current. The next bell, the next reading, The next stretch of labor will arrive whether you feel ready or not. For now, though, the hour softens. You walk beneath the cloister roof. Sun and shade alternate across your path. The meal is behind you. The afternoon has not yet asked much in words. It waits in the clean, pale light, and you move toward it at the monastery's patient pace. The pale light in the cloister does not last in quite the same way all afternoon. It shifts almost without announcing itself. The bright edge on the paving stones softens. The warmth held in the wall begins, very slowly, to loosen. And then another bell gathers the house again. You turn from the walk, or from whatever modest task has filled the interval, and go back with the others toward the church, for none, the mid-afternoon office. By this point in the day, the body has settled into obedience, though not always into comfort. Your legs know the turns of the passage. Your hands know how to gather the cowl. Your stomach has long since accepted that dinner is over, and supper, if there is any in this season or house, belongs to another part of the day. The church receives you with the same stone coolness as before, but now the mind is a little duller, and attention has to be carried more deliberately. This is one of the quiet truths of monastic routine. It is not made only of devotion in its brightest sense. It is also made of returning when you feel ordinary, returning when the meal has settled heavily, returning when the air is warm or the feet are sore, or the page you left behind was beginning to blur. The hours do not ask whether you feel lifted. They ask whether you come. So you stand, bow, answer, kneel, rise. The chanting is familiar enough to hold you even when thought wanders at the edges. In some houses around the year 1200, the exact arrangement of psalms, prayers, and customs would differ a little by order and local use. A Benedictine house and a Cistercian one do not sound identical in every detail. Still, the broad shape remains dependable. The office interrupts the private drift of the afternoon and binds it back into common time. When none ends, no great release follows. The service is brief beside the long wait of the night office, yet it marks a change all the same. The day has begun to slope downward. What remains is not the fresh labor of morning. It is the thinner, quieter work of late hours. You step out again beneath a light that already feels more slanted than before, and the monastery gives you back to the last useful stretch before evening prayer. This later work can take many forms, because no single medieval monk lives the same day in every house. In one community, you might return to reading, in another, to the garden, to mending, to the oversight of stores, to checking vessels, lamps, cloth, or books. If you are a novice, your tasks may still be simple and supervised. If you are older, you may be trusted with keys, lists, measures, and little responsibilities that seem small only from a distance. Monastic life is full of such small responsibilities. Someone notices the wax, someone notices the water, someone notices that a hinge has loosened, that a bench is splitting, that beans must be sorted, that a brother has coughed through the last two offices. The later afternoon has a different sound from morning labor. It is less eager, if eager was ever the word. Buckets do not ring so sharply now. Footsteps drag a little more over the stone. Even the garden, if you pass near it, seems to breathe slower. Sage and fennel hold their scent close in the cooling air. Damp soil darkens where water has been carried. In a herb plot enclosed by low edging, medicinal plants and kitchen greens wait without haste. Monastic gardens are useful places before they are pretty ones. They feed the pot. They supply simples for the infirmary. They give the hands something honest to do in season. And by this hour they also offer a kind of measured silence, full of bees in summer and bare stems in winter, never entirely still. If the house is prosperous, much of what keeps the day smooth has already been prepared elsewhere by servants, hired workers, tenants, and, in many communities, lay brothers tied closely to the monastery's working life. That too belongs to the truth of your quiet afternoon. The calm inside the cloister does not float free of labour. It rests on stores of grain, on managed fields, on rents and dues, on kitchens and barns and granges beyond the wall. You may not handle all those matters yourself. You may hardly see some of them, but they sit underneath your hour of reading and prayer, the way foundation stones sit under a floor. By now, the body begins to lean, very gently, toward evening, not yet toward sleep. That is still some distance away with Vespers, perhaps a light collation in some customs and Compline still to come. But the strongest part of the day is past. Your thoughts no longer move quickly. They move more like the shadows in the cloister arcade, lengthening by degrees that are easy to miss until you look again. So you continue with what is placed before you. A book may be closed and wrapped. A tool may be cleaned and returned. A path may be crossed one more time from workroom to walk, from walk to church door, from church door toward the refectory side of the house. No one hurries. The rhythm would not be improved by hurrying. It would only become untidy. And that, in its modest way, is one of the hardest disciplines here. Not heroic suffering, not constant vision, just steadiness. Doing the next appointed thing while the afternoon thins around you, keeping the shape of the day intact as its energy ebbs. You feel it in the shoulders, in the knees, in the small wish to sit a little longer than the bell allows. Still, the community keeps moving at its patient pace. The light lowers across stone and grass. Somewhere nearby, a wooden door closes with a soft, flat sound, and you remain inside the long, careful descent from midday toward evening. The afternoon keeps loosening its grip. Light that was white a few hours ago has turned gentler now, more honey than chalk, and it lies in long, quiet bands across the cloister walk. You feel it on the side of your face as you move again toward church. The day is not over. It is only narrowing. By this point, your body knows the route without much help from thought. Dormitory, stair, church. Cloister, refectory, yard. Chapter house, passage, church, again. A monastery teaches the feet almost as firmly as it teaches the mind. Repeated paths become a kind of memory laid into muscle. Even in a house where observance differs a little from place to place, the principle is much the same. The hours return, the spaces answer them. Vespers gathers the community in the late part of day, when work has thinned and the remaining light begins to feel borrowed. In many Benedictine and Cistercian houses, this office has a different weight from the smaller hours. It is not hurried. Psalms unfold in their measured order. A hymn rises and settles. Candles may begin to matter more now, especially in darker seasons, or in a church whose walls drink up the evening. The sound is familiar enough that you do not listen for surprise. You rest inside repetition. The church receives you the way stone always does here, without warmth and without complaint. The floor keeps some trace of the day's coolness. The air smells faintly of old wax, damp mortar, wool, and human nearness. Not crowded nearness. Monastic life is communal, but it is not bustling in the way of a town street or a market shed. The noise of many people has been trimmed down and trained. What remains is the soft friction of cloth, the turning of a page, a throat cleared once and then restrained. You stand, you bow. You sit when the order asks it, then stand once more. The body is worked by prayer even when the work looks still. Knees and lower back know this well enough. Shoulders know it too. By evening, the small obediences have accumulated. Not one of them is dramatic. Together, they leave a kind of weariness that is plain and almost clean. You are tired in a narrow, purposeful way. The psalms of evening do not erase the day behind them. They gather it. They pass over the meal already eaten, the reading done, the passage through corridors, the labor assigned, the private drifting thoughts you have tried not to entertain too lovingly. If this is a Cistercian house, the setting may feel plainer, the surfaces less eager to shine. If it is a richer Benedictine house, there may be more carved work, more visual company in stone and wood. Yet in either case, the effect of evening is similar. Daylight is withdrawing, and the office receives that fact instead of arguing with it. Outside, beyond enclosure, lay brothers or servants may still be finishing practical tasks. Animals must be shut in. Tools must be put away. Fires in service spaces need tending. A monastery can seem made of chant when you are in the choir, but its calm depends on many ordinary endings taking place at once. Doors latched, buckets emptied, a bench set back against the wall, a last armful of wood carried under cover. The choir monk may not do each of these things himself, but he lives inside their completion. As the office goes on, the windows alter almost imperceptibly. Shapes remain, but edges soften. Brightness leaves first from corners, then from faces, then from the pages that a reader or cantor might once have seen with ease. Evening in a stone church is patient. It does not fall all at once. It withdraws in layers, and you feel your own alertness withdrawing with it. When Vespers ends, the release is gentle. No one bursts out into relief. Relief would be too noisy a feeling. Instead, the community loosens by degrees. You turn, file out, and carry the office with you the way you carry the day itself. Not as a sharp memory, but as a rhythm still moving through the body. The cloister outside looks dimmer now. The air has cooled. Stone gives back the heat it never quite held. And the monastery, for all its rules and prayers and stern intentions, begins to feel very close to something simple. Supper, if there is one by custom and season. Quiet movement, less light, less speech. The slow approach of the last duties before bed. After Vespers, the monastery draws itself inward. The brighter part of the day is over now, and what remains is narrower, softer, and more deliberate. If there is a light evening meal by local custom or season, it is plain and brief. Bread, perhaps. A little drink. Nothing that asks much of the senses. In some houses and on many days, the main meal has already done its work, and evening is less about eating than about easing the body toward stillness. You move with the others through familiar stone. By now, your feet know the slight hollow in the floor where many feet have passed before yours. The air feels cooler than it did at noon. Smoke from the kitchen has thinned. The smell left behind is faint. Damp mortar, wool, a trace of wax. The monastery does not become silent all at once. It sheds sound little by little. A doorbar rests into place. A stool scrapes once. Sandaled steps pass, then fade. This is the hour of Compline, the last office of the day. In the Benedictine world, it is meant to gather up what remains unsettled and press it flat before sleep. Not exciting work, not visible work. Still, it matters. A day organized by bells must end in order as well as begin in order. You enter the church again, and the night version of the building receives you. Less color now, less outline, a little lamp glow, a little candlelight. The dark above the nave feels higher than it did before. The service itself is not a performance. It is repetition, and repetition is part of the point. Psalms return. prayers return. The body returns to the same motions it made last night and the night before that. If you are tired, that sameness can feel merciful. You do not need to invent devotion from scratch every evening. The words already exist. The path through them already exists. You step into it and let it carry you. In some monastic customs, after Compline, the great silence begins in earnest. Speech narrows sharply or stops, except for real need. That discipline can sound severe when written on a page, but by this hour it may also feel practical. There is simply not much left worth saying. The day has used up most of its language. Your voice has been spent in chant, in short necessary replies, perhaps in reading if that fell to you, perhaps in work if your task allowed speech at all. Night asks less. Silence in a monastery is never complete silence. That belongs more to imagination than to stone buildings full of human beings. Even now, there is cloth moving against cloth. Someone coughs once and tries not to repeat it. A lamp trembles. Timber answers the cooler air with a small, dry click. If there are lay brothers, servants, guests, or men still finishing practical work in outer ranges, life continues there too. Yet for you, inside the choir monk's closing routine, the soundscape has thinned enough that each small noise seems separate, almost polished by the dark. Compline also carries a simple, physical kindness. At this point in the day, you do not need instruction on what comes next. The whole monastery leans toward bed. You can feel that shared direction in the pacing, in the shorter distances the mind is willing to travel, in the relief of not being asked to do one more solid hour of labor. The great structures of monastic life often seem stern from the outside. Inside them, some comforts are very small. One of them is this: eventually, the rule leads you to sleep. When the office ends, the departure is even quieter than after Vespers. You do not linger to talk. That is the point. You turn and leave in order. The church behind you holds its dimness. The cloister receives you again, and night air sits under the arcade like cool water in a basin. The sky above the open square has darkened fully, or nearly so depending on season. In summer, there may be a long blue hesitation. In winter, darkness settles early and with conviction. As you walk back, the monastery feels reduced to essentials: arch, path, door, lamp, sleeve, breath. The grander idea of monastic life, if anyone outside still carries such an idea, is nowhere in this walk. There are no shining revelations. There is only a tired man in wool crossing stone because a rule, a custom, and many years of repeated practice have arranged his evening this way. It is humble and a little stiff in the joints, and very ordinary. That ordinariness is part of the design. The rule of Saint Benedict does not build a life out of rare, exalted moments. It builds one out of regular return. Return to prayer, return to reading, return to table, return to work, return, finally, to bed. You have done this since before dawn, and the shape of it has held, even when attention wandered, even when the body dragged, even when one office resembled the last so closely that the hours seemed to blur into one long obedience. Now another return waits. The dormitory is ahead, and with it the plain business of lying down in shared darkness while the last warmth leaves the stones for the night. You leave the church with the others in a line that barely seems to disturb the dark. The last office is done. The words of Compline have settled over the house, and now the great silence holds. It is not a dramatic silence. It is practical. No needless speech, no small evening gossip, no easing of the day with chatter. Just footsteps, cloth, breath, and the occasional dry sound of wood answering a change in the night air. The dormitory waits where it always has. Plain boards, shared space, wool blankets that keep some warmth and lose some. In many houses, monks sleep in a common dormitory rather than tucked into private little rooms. Privacy is not the design. Regularity is, nearness is, supervision is. Rest belongs to the community too. You are tired in a way that feels almost clean. The body has been used, directed, and brought back into line again and again until even lying down feels like another assigned act, simple and necessary. You loosen what must be loosened. You keep on what custom requires, or what the cold persuades you not to remove. Medieval monastic sleep is often practical more than comfortable. Exact habits differ from house to house, and season matters, and rank matters, and local custom matters too. Still, the broad shape is steady enough. Shared sleeping, plain bedding, little heat. A life arranged so that no one sinks too deeply into softness. Around you, the motions are small and familiar. A blanket lifted, a weight settling onto straw or mattress. A quiet cough quickly smothered into cloth. Someone shifts sore feet before lying flat. Someone else lowers himself with the care of a man whose knees have carried him across stone for years. In a wealthy imagination, the monk lives above ordinary bodily nuisance. In the real monastery, the body comes along every step. It is cold when the room is cold. It stiffens after standing. It notices rough seams, thin bedding, and the stubborn fact that a dormitory contains other sleeping men. The room smells faintly of wool, old wood, cooled skin, and the dry dust that gathers wherever cloth is shaken and folded every day. Any candlelight is low and brief. In stricter observance, the point is not to make the evening cozy. It is simply to get the brothers from the last office to their beds in order. Cistercian ideals, especially in the 12th and 13th centuries, press toward plainness here as elsewhere. Less ornament, less distraction, less to invite the mind outward. A Benedictine house not living under Cistercian custom might not look identical, but the underlying wish is similar. Night should narrow life to its bare requirements. You lie down, and the stone-built day seems to keep going inside the body. Knees remember standing at the offices. Hands remember pages, bowls, tools, benches, doors. Ears almost expect another bell at once, because bells have ruled the hours more faithfully than appetite or sunlight. This is one of the strange, gentle facts of monastic life. Sleep is never entirely your own. It belongs to the timetable as much as waking does. In many seasons and in many houses, the night will break again before dawn for the next office. Rest comes in pieces. That interrupted sleep changes the feel of everything. You do not sink into the kind of modern night that stretches unbroken behind a closed door. You sleep inside a system. The body learns this even if it does not admire it. It yields in stages. It dozes with the knowledge that another rising waits in darkness. The rule of Saint Benedict is not interested in creating perfect bodily comfort. It is interested in shaping souls through regular practices, and regular practices make use of bodies exactly as they find them. Sleepy, stubborn, trainable, distractible, sometimes devout, sometimes simply exhausted. And yet, there is a kind of mercy in the sameness. You do not have to invent the night. You do not have to choose what comes next. The bell has chosen. The custom has chosen. The house itself, with dormitory above and church nearby, has chosen. Monastic architecture helps command the body. The route from bed to office is built into stone, into stairs, into doors, into habits repeated until they feel older than memory. The monastery is not only a place where prayer happens, it is a machine for returning you, hour after hour, to the same essential acts. Outside, if this is winter, the dark is heavy and damp against the walls. If summer, the air may be softer, but the night is still not warm enough to make comfort careless. Somewhere beyond the cloister are barns, workshops, kitchens, gardens, drains, fences, guest spaces, and all the service buildings that made the day possible. Somewhere beyond those again are fields and rents and labour obligations and lay brothers and servants and tenants, depending on the house, all the hidden support beneath the clean line of a choir monk's routine. But none of that asks anything of you just now. For the moment, the abbey has narrowed to blanket, breathing, timber, dark. You feel the mattress give a little under the shoulder. You turn once, perhaps twice. Then stillness begins to gather. Not perfect stillness, communal stillness. The sort that contains a rustle here, a sigh there, and then longer stretches where many separate bodies seem to breathe as one large sleepy animal under a timber roof. It is a humble ending for a life often painted in gold leaf. No vision, no thunder, just fatigue, discipline, and the relief of horizontal rest. This too is part of the work of God, though it hardly looks grand. To stop, to be quiet, to give up the day without argument. You have passed through cold corridors, fixed hours, simple food, measured reading, repeated prayer, and the small frictions of living close to others. Now the monastery asks less of you for a little while. Only stillness, only darkness, only the shared, unfinished sleep of men who know the bell will find them again, and who lie down anyway beneath the slow, cooling night. The night does not stay whole for very long. At some point, without ceremony, sleep thins. Not because you have finished resting, not because the body is eager, only because the life around you is built to begin again before comfort has had much time to settle in. Somewhere in the dark, a bell sounds. It is not angry, it is not loud in the way a modern alarm is loud, but it is enough. A worked piece of metal, struck in cold air, sending a measured note through timber, stone, wool, and bone. You wake inside that note. For a little while, nothing much happens. A man turns on his straw mattress. Another coughs into his sleeve. Someone sits up slowly, as if the spine must be persuaded. The dormitory keeps its old smells. Wool, dust, wood. The faint human sourness of many sleepers in one long room. Under it all, a colder smell rises from the stone floor, the smell of a building that has held darkness for hours and is not finished holding it. Your own blanket has gathered a little warmth. Leaving it is the first task of the day, though the day itself has not yet shown its face. The rule and the customs of houses like this do not wait for dawn in the simple sense. Time here belongs less to sunrise than to offices, to bells, to the repeated return of prayer. Historians can trace that pattern clearly enough across Benedictine life, and Cistercian practice gives it an even plainer frame. Exact timings change with season, latitude, custom, health, and rank. But the broken night is no invention. Monastic sleep is often shared, regulated, and interrupted. So you do what generations of men in similar rooms have done. You gather yourself without speech. You pull your clothing into order with slow fingers. Cloth brushes cloth in the dark. A wooden frame gives a small complaint as weight shifts off it. Bare feet or thin soles meet a floor that feels almost wet with cold, though it is only stone drawing heat away, as stone always does. No one needs to explain where to go. The body knows by repetition. Down from bed, into habit. Toward the night stair if the house has one, or through the familiar passage that joins sleep to worship so often that the route has become part of the prayer itself. The church waits in darkness. The psalms wait in darkness. The whole round waits, patient as ever, for men who are not fully awake. And so, after all the effort of yesterday, After chapter and labour and reading and meals and silence and the long cooling of evening, you are asked for the same obedience once more. Not brilliance, not strong feeling, only rising. That may be the most ordinary thing about this life. The great stories told later about monks often glow with manuscripts, visions, saints, carved choirs, and high theology. Those things belong here somewhere, at least in some houses and some centuries. But the life beneath them is made of this quieter material. A bell in the dark, stiff knees, shared air. The mild ache of having slept just enough to notice you would rather continue. If peace lives in such a place, it is not the peace of ease. It is the peace of repetition accepted so completely that even reluctance has its appointed hour. You stand, others stand. The dormitory loosens a little more from sleep. Perhaps there is a lamp, perhaps only a little borrowed light from the corridor, or the memory of where things are. We should be careful here. Not every house is the same, and a single smooth scene can hide many local differences. Yet the broad shape remains trustworthy. Men rise in common. They dress simply. They move through cold architecture toward a service that will begin long before the fields brighten. Outside, the world is still mostly hidden. The cloistergarth is a darker patch inside darkness. Rooflines and arcades wait in outline. If there is frost, it keeps its counsel. If there is rain, it sounds faintly in the court or on the outer buildings. The barns, kitchens, gardens, workshops, drains, stables, gatehouse and guest rooms all still exist in the dark, though none ask for your hands yet. That is another truth the monastery teaches by habit. The place is larger than prayer alone. Its calm depends on bread, stored grain, clean vessels, repaired roofs, tended herbs, and the labour of many people, some professed, some not. Even so, before all that stirs again, the church has first claim. You begin to move with the others. No one hurries. No one lingers much either. In communities governed by repeated action, slowness and punctuality can coexist. The pace is modest. The expectation is exact. You pass from the warmth your body made in bed to the larger cold of the building. The air touches your face differently in the passageway. It carries a hint of ash, old wax, damp mortar, and the thin draft that every large stone complex seems to keep somewhere in reserve. Yesterday has not quite ended in the body. Today's first office has already begun in time. This is how the cycle holds. You lie down, you rise, you cross the same worn path. And by doing it again, you become part of the monastery's oldest sound. Not the bell, not the chant, but the soft movement of men answering both. Ahead, the church waits for matins once more, and the night